Okay, picture this. A national park, somewhere you'd go for, peace and quiet.
Right, serene.
Exactly. But back in March 2021, Cuyahoga Valley National Park, it became a crime scene. A murder that, started this whole tragic chain reaction.
And the sources we looked at, they point to a specific person, Chelsea Perkins, and the victim, Matthew Dunmire. It wasn't random.
No, not at all. The motive seems to go back years. Perkins felt Dunmire had sexually assaulted her back in 2017 in Virginia.
She reported it.
She did, yeah. But the police, according to the material, didn't press charges. Said there wasn't enough evidence.
And that apparently left her feeling like she needed to, the sources used the phrase, settle an old score. She wasn't letting it go.
So that's what we're diving into today.
Yeah.
Using these sources to really unpack how that initial act, that drive for vengeance, just spiraled. And it didn't just affect Perkins, it tragically pulled in the victim's family, too.
It's quite chilling when you look at the planning involved based on these reports. Perkins gets back in touch with Dunmire online.
Right, after years.
Yeah. Then drives, over 300 miles, Virginia to Ohio, rents an Airbnb, actually spends the night with him before the murder.
That level of premeditation is stark in the source material. And Dunmire, he seemed completely unaware. Told coworkers he was meeting, like a girl he met online.
Told his girlfriend something about donating plasma, just a normal errand.
Yeah, his last text to her was just, okay, I'll see you in a little while. So casual.
And then the sources say she lures him off trail to a secluded spot in the park.
And that's where it happened.
That's where she shot him. In the back of the head with a gun she'd brought all the way from Virginia.
So hikers find his body a few days later. How did investigators piece it together? I mean, she drove hundreds of miles back home.
Well, it really shows you, doesn't it, how hard it is to truly vanish these days. GPS data was huge. They traced her phone, her car probably, showing her journey from Virginia right into Ohio, and specifically within the park boundaries around the estimated time he was killed.
And there was more.
Oh, yeah. DNA evidence, too, linking her to the scene. But the real smoking gun, as the sources describe it.
Let me guess. The weapon.
Bingo.
Yeah.
A search warrant at her place back in Virginia, they find 3 9mm pistols, and one of them, just sitting in her purse right next to her ID.
Matched the bullet.
Perfect ballistics match.
Wow.
Plus, you had hikers who heard a shot. Another couple saw someone matching her description nearby, looking lost or, out of place. Digital footprints confirmed their online contact, her being in the area. It became pretty overwhelming.
Which explains why Chelsea Perkins eventually pleaded guilty. Federal court, May 2025, second-degree murder and a firearm charge.
Yes, and that plea deal means she's looking at, 20 to 25 years. Sentencing is set for September 2025.
So that part of the legal process concludes. But like we said at the start, the tragedy didn't stop there. The sources paint a really difficult picture for Matthew Dunmire's mother, Tommy Lynn Dunmire.
Right, consumed by grief, obviously, but also, it seems, a lot of frustration, maybe with the investigation while Perkins was still free.
And that grief and frustration apparently led her and Matthew's father, John Nelson McQuillan, down this vigilante path in November 2021.
It's just awful. They thought Perkins was in Washington, D.C., so they travel there.
And Tommy Lynn, the sources say she used a disguise, knocked on an apartment door pretending to be UPS.
Yeah, and when a woman opened the door, a completely innocent woman, just 30 years old, nothing to do with anything, Tommy Lynn shot her. Twice.
Unbelievable. Did the woman?
Thankfully, she survived. Yeah. But Tommy Lynn and John, they fled, tried changing license plates, the whole thing.
But they were caught.
Well, it ended tragically. A confrontation with police November 18th, 2021. The sources report Tommy Lynn Dunmire used that same gun from the D.C. shooting to take her own life.
Oh, my goodness. Such a violent, sad end. What happened to the father, John McQuillan?
He was arrested later. He didn't pull the trigger in D.C., but the sources state he knew what Tommy Lynn planned to do, went with her, and helped her try to escape afterwards.
So complicit.
He pleaded guilty to being an accessory after the fact, to assault with intent to kill.
And got prison time?
Yep, 42 months. Sentenced back in June 2022.
So when you piece it all together from these sources, it's just this devastating cycle. Perkins acts out of this perceived injustice. This need for revenge.
Right. Feeling the system failed her years ago, which leads to murder.
And then the victim's parents, crushed by grief and maybe their own sense of failed justice, try to take matters into their own hands.
Leading to another shooting, this time of an innocent person, and ultimately the mother's suicide and the father's imprisonment. It just keeps compounding.
It really forces you, the listener, to think, doesn't it, about what happens when people feel the official channels the justice system haven't worked for them.
Exactly. And what are the real human costs when individuals decide their only option is their own form of justice? This case, laid out in these sources, gives a pretty harrowing answer.